Big Sills. I hope all had a Big Sills Memorial Day weekend. First and foremost, you thank our military personnel, men and women, who serve in our country. You understand what the weekend was for. You watched yourself some sports, whatever it was, NHL, NBA, maybe some USFL, all good. Get yourself ready. We're like 100 days out from the start of the NFL season. You hear me? 100 days out. July 27th is right around the corner. That's report day for training camp for most NFL teams and for the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of news Eagle-wise. And a lot of hope, and in my opinion, a lot of great words coming out of the NovaCare Center. Big Sills has got some insight. And by the way, my friend Gary Cobb was over at the NovaCare Center over the weekend as Eagles are getting ready for their OTAs. Before I get going, let me show you what a gangster move is. I thought it was unbelievable what the Miami Heat did. Basically with walk-on players, people who weren't drafted, and Jimmy Butler. Eric Spoelstra is the best coach in the NBA. Why? Because Pat Riley's the OG. So this guy books a plane flight to Denver to get ready for Thursday's game 1 of the NBA playoffs. Pat Riley did that. He booked a flight as soon as they got done with their task in Boston for game 1. And what do? They go in there and blow out the Celtics. You see, if you envision it and you keep believing in it and you keep talking about it, that becomes a reality. Dude, that's a Muhammad Ali trick. Ali wasn't trying to disrespect his opponents. He was trying to talk himself into the victory, seeing what he was going to do. I talked to Angelo Dundee numerous times. Do you think he really cared it was Liston or Foreman or Frazier or any of those guys? Ali was doing it to convince himself. Man, if you start practicing success and you're constantly doing the right things, and you're looking at the little things, knowing full well that those little things become big things. That's how you become a champion. You practice being a champion. You practice game tempo. You know, I learned it from that guy who wrote that book back there, Swagger. We did everything at a championship level, no matter what it was. Lifting weights, practicing, drills, how we dressed, how we traveled. Everything was professional. Everything was meant like we had done it and been there. We did everything like a pro. That's a professional organization who has a winning culture. That's what culture is. And you saw Heat culture on display. By the way, you could apply that anywhere. I think that's one of the great things that the Philadelphia Eagles are practicing right now. They're practicing being a champion all the time. That's not a cliche. It's not something you write on a chalkboard or you see over a locker room. Because when you keep seeing it, you keep saying it, eventually it becomes reality. Jimmy used to have this saying about players and how he motivated people. Coach Johnson would say this stuff. You tell a player who he is, he'll remain. You tell a player what he can be, he'll become. He believed that until his last day coaching. Coach Johnson believed that. And by the way, I saw it. And he's right. You keep motivating people the right way, keep putting a good environment in the building. I think championships are won in the offseason in football. I think you apply all the things that you did in the offseason when the fall comes. All the hard work, all the preparation, all the conditioning. Shit, by the time you show up in July in today's NFL, if you're not in shape, you're not mentally in shape, you're not winning. And that comes from the top down. This is why I say this to you about this Eagle organization. They're practicing being a champion all the time, and the momentum that they've taken, I'll tell you one thing that I am impressed with. Most teams get deflated after a Super Bowl loss. Shit, sometimes most teams get deflated after a Super Bowl win. They kept the momentum going. The only other organization that I can see in my time in the last 25 years that's kept the momentum going like that was New England. Don't you feel right now? Get this. I feel better today about the Philadelphia Eagles' chances on winning a Super Bowl than I did in December. Is that fair? Hey, don't you feel better? This is what a statement. Don't you feel better today about the Eagles' chances of winning a Super Bowl than you did in December? And you lost one in February. Why do I feel better? Because I think it's a culture. 11 goes Super Bowl hangover. I don't think so. I don't feel a hangover. I feel momentum. I feel momentum. I feel pretty good about it. Hey, let me just show you something else about momentum and about being underdogs. Who would have ever thought that the Florida Panthers and the Miami Heat would be in finals? The Florida Panthers and the Miami Heat. Dude, Pat Riley is the original OG on motivation. I love that guy. I told you that story in one of my favorite stories of all time when he had Game 6 in the Garden. And the junior sky hook. This is going to take Will to beat these guys to close them out. It's going to take Will. And one of the only teams ever to close the Celtics out on their home floor in an NBA Finals. Dude, great stuff. Great stuff. I want to get into some topics. By the way, bottom of the hour, our friend Gary Cobb from Fox 29 in Philadelphia. And Kevin Frazier from Entertainment Tonight will join us in hour number 2 at 4:30. Talk to my dear friend of a long time, get his thoughts on the NBA Finals, get his thoughts on the upcoming NFL season and why the NFL is just exploding. Do you know the top 20 television shows in the history of TV are all NFL shows? I think MASH has still one of the spots when it comes to the most watched television shows of all time. I think MASH and Friends, something like that, are still on that list. Anyway, so I was talking to a friend of mine who was talking with Howie Roseman a couple days ago. You know Mike Florio? Pro Football Talk? Okay. Howie Roseman told him something on why he picked Jalen Carter. We got a couple Jalen Carter topics here today. You know why he picked Jalen Carter? I'm paraphrasing here. He said, my draft process in the past, I may have gone too conservative. Instead of going with more of a gut feeling, I went with the analytics of the player and some of the scouting reports, and I didn't pull the trigger on potentially the guy that I actually wanted. Basically, in essence, admitting that the Eagles had gone too conservative. Maybe 3 years back, all the way back to 2000, that their approach was conservative. He didn't want to make that mistake this time. He was going to take a gamble. He was going to take that gamble and take Carter. And he wasn't going to go and and have that scenario play itself out again where he wasn't going to gamble. Tone goes, in other words, how he always overcooked the process. Something I accused him of. It's not admitting failure. Do you know what that's admitting? Growth. Howie Roseman, since he came out of the broom closet, has become the best general manager. Veach, John Schneider, those three guys are probably all in the same room. John Schneider from Seattle, Brett Veach in Kansas City, but that's a lot to do with Andy there too. And Howie Roseman, he has become such a better general manager because he's listening. I got to tell you, man, this new wave GM guys versus those old school guys, those Bill Polian dudes, and those guys back in the day who their word was set in stone no matter what, is gone. I got to tell you, man, these GMs that are in the NFL today, because their asses are on the line and you get fired quicker. One thing we've learned in sports, good people get fired. Look at the NBA. Shit, man, there's a ton of good coaches that get fired every year because you can't get rid of the players. Why? Because they're guaranteed contracts. So you fire good coaches. You see that all the time. Do you understand the reason that good coaches get fired in the NBA? Because you can't fire the players because they got guaranteed contracts. That's why you get rid of bad players in the NFL and don't fire certain coaches. Because you can hang with the coaches because the organization wants to hang with the coach. NBA, they're not going to hang because someone's got to fall on the sword for failure. Someone's got to fall on the sword for failure in the NBA when teams fail like the Sixers. By the way, Nick Nurse is now your coach in Philly. Does it matter? Does it really matter? You know, I know that Tone and I are kind of on the same page with this when it comes to Josh Harris. Does it matter if it's Nick Nurse, Doc Rivers, Mike Brown, name a guy, Eric Spoelstra? Does it matter? It's the culture we just talked about. Does it matter? It'll be another one-round exit again, and the coach will be to blame, and he'll be on the conveyor belt. Before it was the player conveyor belt. Now it's the coaching conveyor belt in Philly. You guys got a new scapegoat, your coaches. Not the players anymore. Does it matter, really? It doesn't matter because your culture sucks. Heat culture, Eagle culture. Those are cultures that are practicing championship mentality every freaking day. Every day, they're practicing it. Who sets the culture? The owner. The only reason Howie Roseman is being considered the best general manager in the NFL is because your owner does something that no other owner has shown yet that he has the onions to do. Hey, guess what? I believe in this guy. Instead of just signing some fantasy contract, here's why Jeffrey Lurie's the best owner in football right now when it comes to players and why players want to play in Philly. Because he puts his money where his mouth is. He doesn't write you some phantom contract and backload the contract so that they can blow you out and fire you and you never get the money. You know what this dude does? Let's pay him up front. We're going to get the best out of the kid up front anyway. Kid gets hurt. At least we get a couple years out of it. It was worth it. Instead, you know what you have owners doing? I'll pay you $50 million 3 years from now, but I'm going to pay you $4 million now. Dude, those are bullshit contracts. Those are owners who don't believe in what their process is. The owner in Philly does. He puts his money where his mouth is. That's why your cap hits in the Jalen Hurts contract are minuscule compared to what you're even seeing with Daniel Jones. And Roseman now is growing because he has been given autonomy. The same power that Doug Peterson coveted as head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, Howie's been given. Just in a different job title. He now is the guy making all the decisions because the owner believes in Howie Roseman. There's a chain of command in Philly. There's a chain of command in Miami. It starts with Riley and Mickey Aronson, the owner of Carnival and the owner of the Miami Heat. Don't you think that there's any coincidence? By the way, just for the record, don't you find it odd that if you name the 10 greatest players in the history of the NBA, the only player in that top 10, besides Wilt, who has a losing record in finals, is LeBron James? Why is that? The only time he ever really had a great head coach was in Miami. The only time he ever had a really great organizational director of operations was Pat Riley. The only time he ever had the trifecta working at one time was in Miami with Mickey Aronson. Every single great player in NBA history had a great coach connected to him, except LeBron. His best coach is Eric Spoelstra. That's why I say this. LeBron James probably left 3 NBA championships on the table in Miami because of his ego. He didn't want to go and be part of a winning culture. Look at where he is now with the Lakers. It's a train wreck. Because LeBron took some shit teams to the finals? Absolutely not true. You want to know what shit teams are? Try getting drafted to the Chicago Bulls and remember how shitty that team was and then sticking to something and finishing it. And playing your entire career in places. LeBron James went team hunting. His journey wasn't nowhere. He went to loaded teams. After Miami, he always went to the places that had teams that had loaded players on them. He didn't start a project. Remember something about Magic showing up? You know, everyone's like this. Again, this is about organization. I'm going to turn it back to Howie here. But just remember this about Jabbar in Los Angeles. Correct me if I'm wrong. Well, he had Kareem. Well, what did Kareem do from 75 to 81? What did he do? Nothing. Scoring titles? MVPs? No NBA championships. Then Magic showed up. Okay, then Magic showed up. Remember, he didn't win shit in Los Angeles until Magic showed up. Paul Westhead wasn't the guy. Do you know they fired Paul Westhead? Let me just show you, again, organizational. Look what Dr. Buss did. He went to his best player, Magic Johnson. They had beaten your Sixer team. And he goes like this, I can't play for that guy. That guy does not respect me or really a lot of things, and it's about him. Pat Riley didn't win that first title in Philly. It was Paul Westhead. They fired a guy who won the NBA title and gave it to a guy who was in the television booth, and Pat Riley. That was a TV dude, like Steve Kerr. But Buss had enough belief in his organization because who was running it? Jerry West. It was Dr. Buss, Jerry West, and Pat Riley. Look what you got in Philly. Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, who's kind of like, you know, he could be changed out too, just like Doug Collins could be. See, to me, Nick Sirianni's Doug Collins. Maybe he's not the guy. Maybe there needs to be one more dude. Because look at all the great Super Bowl coaches and players. Can you name me a Super Bowl winning quarterback that didn't have a great coach? Can you? I know you could say this about Doug. Was Doug really a great coach, or is he going? I think Doug is a great coach. He's turning out to be. Can you name me a guy who's won a Super Bowl? Name me a coach that's won a Super Bowl as the head coach with his quarterback that wasn't a great head coach. Let's see. Joe Flacco, we had John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh's going to the Super Bowl or the Hall of Fame. Barry Switzer, okay, that's fair. Switzer was kind of holding the mail for Jimmy. Sure. Okay. Tony Dungy. Peyton Manning. Sirianni's Pat Riley? Absolutely not. Sirianni's Doug Collins, I said. Gruden? I think John was a pretty good coach. I don't think he's spectacular. Mike Shanahan had John Elway. I'm talking about two dudes, Mike Shanahan and the quarterback. Look at all the great quarterbacks that have won Super Bowls. Mike Holmgren, Brett Favre, Belichick, Brady, Walsh, Montana, Noel, Bradshaw, Jimmy Johnson, Aikman. I think Sean McVay's a hell of a coach. It's about culture. Let me bring it back to Philly. So Howie didn't want to make a mistake on Jalen Carter by not going for it. Good for him, man. That's a gamble you take. Okay? That's a gamble you take. By all intent purposes, he looks spectacular right now and in shape. See, to me right now, Jalen Carter, it's not about training his body. To me, it's about keeping him focused, like it was with Jerome. Let me get over to Carter now. Let me tell you what they're saying about your boy, Jalen Carter. Unbelievable strength, footwork, lateral movement, pass rushing skills. He's already your best defensive lineman. And they haven't even